I spent most of my childhood falling on ice, not metaphorically, literally. As a competitive figure skater, I fell all the time. And when I would finally learn how to land a new jump, it was never because I suddenly believed in myself. It was always because I had fallen hundreds of times before then, and my body had learned what to do, bruise by bruise, fall by fall. On days when I would lose confidence in myself, no one ever suggested I skip practice. No one said, just pretend you're an Olympian. That would have been absurd. Because in sports, we respect practice. You gain your confidence through repetition. You earn your mastery through falling and learning to get back up again. And yet, when we enter the classroom or the workplace, we stop applying that same logic about skill and mastery. What I have learned in both my own life and in my research is that far too many of us have been told to fake it rather than to build real skill and competence. Yes, mindset matters, but mindset alone doesn't accomplish the work. No matter how much you believe in your dreams, if you have not trained for it, you will fall. For over 20 years, I have taught college students. I have sat across from brilliant, disciplined, deeply thoughtful students who whisper, I feel like a fraud. They tell me they have imposter syndrome, this feeling that they don't belong here, that they're not smart enough to be here, or maybe that it was a mistake and they'll be kicked out. I know that feeling all too well, as do many of you. In fact, researchers report that over 70% of us will feel this way at least once in our lifetime, if not more. But it's not just a feeling. In my work studying microaggressions, I see how subtle biases shifts our thinking. It pulls our attention away from building skills and competence and moves it towards impression management and seeking approval. So rather than asking, how can I get better? We start asking, how can I get them to like me, to approve of me? As a petite Vietnamese American woman who looks very young, I'm often judged and underestimated before I speak. At the start of each semester, my students mistake me for a fellow student or the teaching assistant rather than their professor. W.E.B. Du Bois, over a century ago, described this when he talked about the Black experience of being racialized into Black America, and he named this split double consciousness. It's the idea that you could see yourself as worthy through your own eyes and simultaneously as unworthy through the eyes of a society that measures and ranks you as less than. He was not describing insecurity. He was naming the strain of being oppressed and marginalized in this country. So when my students tell me they have imposter syndrome, I ask them, who are you trying to imposter? And they can rarely answer that question because they don't actually want to become those caricatures of the real professionals that they've imagined. They see that template and they know it doesn't reflect them. So what if nothing is wrong with them? What if these so-called imposter feelings are actually accurate reads of the environments they are in? Environments where the people around them treat them like they don't belong. Environments where they are being asked to change, conform, and assimilate. I didn't know it when I began my career. These students are not asking to sneak in to corrupt the system. They want to enter it, to understand it, to transform it for the better. I didn't know it when I began my career, but this is what I now call the infiltrator experience. An infiltrator enters an imperfect system and makes an honest assessment of the environment that they are in. You learn the rules of the game, you gain influence, and you stay focused on the change that brought you there to begin with. When I graduated with my doctorate, I barely secured my first assistant professor position. I know this because one of my new colleagues told me I was the last choice candidate. Everyone else had declined. If I didn't already have imposter syndrome, it certainly began there. So carrying this weight of imposter syndrome, I worked hard to be liked. I did everything they told me to do, and I worked harder than probably was needed. And yet, deep inside, I felt smaller and more incompetent than I ever have. I was careful all the time. I was careful not to say too much, careful not to say too little, careful not to be too young, too ethnic, too angry, too ambitious. I was exhausted. Of course I felt like an imposter. They all treated me like I was one. Imposter feelings are products of hierarchies. Those at the top can only have power if they hold the rest of us down and convince us to stay there. Infiltrators must gain entry into the systems they wish to change. So although I was disappointed to learn that I was the last choice candidate, the truth is I got in. I had a seat at the table. That is what truly mattered. To keep this job, I would have to learn and meet the requirements of the job. Now, it would seem simple enough to just come to work and do the job, except those of us with double consciousness know there aren't just one set of rules, there are two. There are the explicit rules that you must follow, and then there are the unspoken rules that are sometimes more important. Let me demonstrate. At some point, I was told that successful assistant professors are the first to arrive and the last to leave. What I actually came to learn was that it was your office light. If your office light was on, you were serious. And if your office light was off, then you were considered suspect and thus undeserving. So when I didn't follow this rule and I used the flexibility of my job to work from home, colleagues questioned my commitment. And those gatekeepers made sure to mention loudly when I was not visible. So with the help of outside mentors, I interrogated this rule. What was the real requirement? Was it my physical presence? Or was it scholarly output, strong teaching, meaningful service? Realizing this, I worked where I was most productive. But I also realized the unspoken rule here. Impression and perception mattered in this environment. So at the end of the day, I left my office light on and closed the door so that those colleagues could see the light was on. That was my strategy. I focused on my craft. I refined my teaching. I deepened my research. I stopped trying to convince people I belonged, and I started trying to build relationships with the people who shared my values. At meetings, I decided to amplify those good ideas that were overlooked. And I supported those colleagues whose voices were dismissed. And slowly, something changed. That was when I began to see myself as an infiltrator. And I also came to realize that I didn't make this up. Many people are infiltrators. Many of you are probably infiltrators. And that includes my parents. My parents are refugees from Vietnam. They came to this country to make sure that our family line had a future. They gave me the best American life that they knew how. And that included celebrating holidays they didn't understand, so that my little brother and I wouldn't have to feel embarrassed at school. They bought the Christmas tree. They even wrapped presents with money they could barely spare. But there was one unspoken rule that they refused to follow. You see, on Christmas morning, a second set of gifts is supposed to magically appear. And most importantly, it's supposed to be credited to an old man in a red suit. My parents decided that didn't make sense, and they did not follow that rule. They had learned the rules of this game, and they made strategic decisions about which rules to follow, which unspoken rules to follow. And they taught me that belonging should not require you to give up your labor and erase yourself. They had learned the rules. And they had made sure that survival in this country did not mean giving up the very reason why they came here to begin with. These lessons shaped how I learned to infiltrate. So today, I want us to discover what becomes possible when we stop asking, how can I look confident? How can I get them to like me, to approve of me? And start asking, what did I come here to build? What skills do I need to build it well? Who do I want to build it with and for? Imposters assimilate. They slowly become the very system that once made them feel small. So the next time you feel like you have imposter syndrome, I want you to pause. Just pause. The people who belittle you and hold you down do not need your help doing that work. Infiltrators are different. Infiltrators know why they entered the room to begin with. They build skills. They build community, and they stay focused on the change that brought them there to begin with. Do not let fitting in distract you from your craft. Notice those unspoken rules. Learn the ones that matter, forget the rest. And if a space refuses to make room for you, it is your commitment to your craft that will carry you into the next space, so that one day you can look up and you will see the people who built alongside you, the mentors and mentees, the students that you mentored, the colleagues who carried this vision with you, the family who believed in you before anyone else did. And that is when you will realize that you did not infiltrate to survive this place. You infiltrated to lead, to guide these very people here. And this community, this is why you did it. Thank you.